Good evening, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus here on Hilaal TV. My name is Faraz Patel. We say thank you for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Now, over the weekend, former South African President Jacob Zuma, his recent visit to Morocco has ignited controversy and divided opinions, with some describing it as a betrayal to Western Sahara. The visit, which occurred quietly on July the 15th, was brought to light through social media posts from Moroccan officials and was confirmed by Yusuf Amrani, Morocco's ambassador to the United States. During his visit, Zuma was photographed alongside MK Party's head of the presidency, Makasela Umzobe, and Moroccan officials, with the South African and Moroccan flags being displayed. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome the ANC's member of the International Relations Subcommittee, Lindiwe Zulu. Zulu, good day. Thank you so much for joining us on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting the African National Congress to further explain.
Yeah, no problem. I want you to touch on the use of the SA flag with this visit that happened in Morocco. Just the ANC's take on this, Zulu.
Well, it's very unfortunate that this whole episode happened because, as we all are aware, former President Jacob Zuma, who is now the president of Umkhonto we Sizwe Party, was part and parcel of a liberation movement that took decisions many, many years ago to be supportive of the peoples of Sahrawi and to be supportive of any other nation in the world that is still struggling from occupation and needing to be supported for its own independence. So the use of the South African flag, obviously, that is even more disturbing on the basis that this was not a representation of the South African government or the country. It was a representation of a political party. So when we deal with political parties, as the African National Congress, for instance, if we go to any place for any meeting and it is an ANC meeting, we always use the flag of the African National Congress. So I think the ANC also has expressed itself through the statements that were made by the SG in particular in response to this issue. It's actually disturbing because we are a liberation movement that continues to support the people, the Sahrawi people, and as it is, I'm sure you're aware, we are going to be having a meeting of liberation movements, a summit of liberation movements. And one of the things that will be discussed will be continued support, which is normally we had the same support as a liberation movement. And former President Jacob Zuma was somebody that received that solidarity support from the peoples of Sahrawi, and the whole world supported us in our liberation struggle.
Zulu, of course, the ANC has expressed its support for the Sahrawi's independence. I want to discuss any potential discussions that could occur with Morocco, as South Africa being a country, or the ANC being a party that has seen itself as one that is interested in, of course, conducting dialogue. What are the chances of that happening, where a discussion with Morocco could occur to go ahead and fast-track this?
Well, it's all in the hands of Morocco to appreciate and understand that the people, the Sahrawi people, need their independence. And this has been going on for a very long time. The United Nations had made itself clear on the matter. The AU has made itself clear on the matter. And what needs to happen, we leave it also with Morocco, because they know exactly what they need to do. It's like somebody saying to us, the apartheid regime then must be left in South Africa, and the people of the world not supporting us for fighting against a system that was oppressive, a system that was excluding the majority of Black people. And I think the AU itself has got very clear guidelines as to sovereignty of all nations, has got very clear guidelines to people who are in a quest to be free, so that they can manage themselves, so that they can take care of they can manage their affairs of their own country without interference from anyone else.
One final question before we go for a quick short break, Ms. Zulu, because we're going to ask you to stay a bit for another discussion on Palestine. I want to touch on the AU. What is it that the AU needs to do to try and make sure that what we're seeing in Western Sahara, this independence that they are seeking, is also fast-tracked from that perspective?
The AU must be very consistent in its approach and in implementing its own decisions. The same thing that the OAU then did when it came to South Africa, once South Africa was declared, and they made sure that they supported the liberation movements in general, but they supported the African National Congress in particular, because the African National Congress was able to travel worldwide, as we will recall the times of our late O.R. Tambo, the president of the African National Congress. He was able to attend all these meetings of the OAU then, as well as regional meetings that were meant to mobilize the entire African continent to make sure that the OAU sticks to its decisions. And in this case, in this particular case, we're calling for the AU to do exactly the same. Be very consistent in the struggle for the peoples of Sahrawi. Be consistent in demanding of Morocco to really free the people of Sahrawi so that they can be able to run their own affairs without interference.
After the break, we continue this conversation with Lindiwe Zulu, who is part of the ANC Subcommittee on International Relations. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with ANC member of the International Relations Subcommittee, Lindiwe Zulu. Ms. Zulu, thank you for staying with us. I want to talk about Palestine. I think we've seen right now a famine that is occurring at this moment in over 20 countries, surprisingly, mostly European, have called for the end of this genocide. I just wanted to get the ANC's take on this, given that, of course, it was in the sixth administration, an ANC-led government that took Israel to the ICJ. And yet Israel have come out and said, well, we reject this call from these 20 countries to go ahead and ask us to end this genocide.
Well, let's start from the point that the African National Congress recognized the need for our government to take the whole issue of Israel to the international court. The basis for us was we knew that if nothing is done with regard to taking them to court at that time, it will be very difficult for the rest of the world if nobody takes a stand and takes a bold stand and make sure that we take Israel to the international court. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're using our own experience as the African National Congress that the world supported us during our own liberation struggle. And we had people that stood up for us as the African National Congress and as a country, South Africa. We had people that stood up, went to the United Nations, went to a number of meetings to go and call for an end to apartheid. So as the African National Congress, we are very confident that the decision that we took at the time, sometimes even being criticized for having taken that decision, we were told that we are taking on a giant. The bottom line for us as a liberation movement was that the peoples of Palestine needed to be free. And we have been part and parcel of long discussions, long engagements, also with the Palestinian people to get them to be united as Palestinians in the struggle against what Israel has been doing against them for so many years.
Ms. Zulu, I want to touch on the Israeli embassy. Of course, when this motion was passed in November 2023, what had happened is it just had been obviously a silent matter, obviously since last year's elections. I just wanted to say, I wanted to ask this question, Ms. Zulu. Will there still be pressure on government to make sure that this motion finally gets to see the light at the end of the day? Because there are still calls for the Israeli embassy to be shut here in South Africa.
The African National Congress has been calling for the government, our government, which was the government of the African National Congress from the 5th to the 6th administration, and we still make the same call to this government, even though it's a government of national unity, we might not necessarily, they might not necessarily agree as government, but as the ANC, we still stand firm by resolutions of conference. The last conference of the African National Congress, actually, many of the delegates of conference were asking us in government, why is it that we are not implementing a decision of conference? And therefore, we still stand by that decision, and we are hoping that government will speed up the process.
Ms. Zulu, I want to touch on obviously the ANC, and I stand to be corrected on this because I did speak to Alvin Boertes, who's of course the Deputy International Relations Minister, who's of course part of the ANC. He said, look, the two-state solution is something that still needs to be looked at. Benjamin Netanyahu, and a lot of it is influenced by the far right of his government, has said, we do not want a two-state solution. The far right has said, we want to see ethnic cleansing occurring with regards to the people of Palestine. Does the ANC still believe this two-state solution can be achieved, given you've got these radical elements within the Israeli government who are speaking a completely different tone?
We still believe that it still stands, irrespective of the fact that so many Palestinians have been slaughtered since October last year. We still believe, as the African National Congress, that the only solution to such conflict is through sitting around the table and having negotiations, but the negotiations also must be for a purpose, because we can't just have negotiations for purposes of with no purpose. The purpose is to make sure that the Palestinians finally find themselves in their own place where they can make their own decisions, govern themselves, unite, obviously, because it's important for us as the ANC. We've been working on this unity of the Palestinian people also for a very long time. We still believe that the two-state solution is the most viable way of ensuring that both the Israelis and the Palestinians live in peace in their own areas. But of course, the challenge now is this kind of destruction that has happened, which unfortunately for us, sometimes we feel the world is not stepping up to ending this war. We wish the world could actually unite and come closer. And these countries that have now stood up in the manner in which they have stood up, we are hoping that many other countries will join them. The two-state solution for us still remains the way to go.
Ms. Zulu, I know you have to go. Just two questions I want you to ask you quickly. The hopes with regards to this weekend's Liberation Movement Summit that is being hosted here in South Africa.
The most important element of the liberation movement is the fact that we have not met as liberation movement at this level for the past almost 20 years or so. It became very important for the liberation movements to come together to look at their history and their purpose as liberation movements, and the fact that we liberated our countries, we freed our countries from colonialism, from apartheid, to everything that was very negative for the region as such, because these are liberation movements of the ANC, South Africa, SWAPO of Namibia, ZANU-PF of Namibia, MPLA of Angola, FRELIMO of Mozambique. These are people that are connected to each other from the time that they were fighting for the liberation of their own countries. Fast forward to the liberation of these countries, we now have to answer the questions to all of us. Our existence, most of us being in government, are we still responding properly to the needs of our people? Are we governing our people to the expectation of our people? Are we working towards regional unity and regional economic empowerment for all of us? Are we working together in such a way that our people benefit from the freedoms, from the government, and from everything that we now say we have as liberation movements? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves and answer, but also ensure that we still remain with the agenda and the agenda of transformation for our peoples in all the countries that belong to liberation movements.
Final question, Ms. Zulu. do liberation movements still have a place in the modern political world?
Absolutely. As long as the peoples in all our countries are still going through such challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, and a slow pace of transformation, particularly for the previously disadvantaged people in all our countries, and that is Black people in particular. As long as the economies of our countries are still not necessarily 100% benefiting those people that went through struggle, the liberation movements, they are still in government, by the way. The majority of them is the liberation movements. They are in government. It is in South Africa where you find that we have a GNU, but even here where you have the GNU, the people voted more for the African National Congress than they voted for any other political party. So we are still very relevant, but we need to make sure that people understand our relevance in terms of today. Of course, appreciating the history and the past, but in terms of today and the way forward, we must be able to tell the peoples of the region what is it that we stand for today.
Ms. Zulu, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's Lindiwe Zulu. Of course, she is a member of the ANC subcommittee on international relations. Well, it's quite clear former President Jacob Zuma has upset the ANC with regards to him going ahead and visiting Morocco, and the question with regards to the independence of Western Sahara. It's not only upset the African National Congress, it's also upsetted the economic freedom fighters, who themselves, they've called the former president a sellout. So interesting how this is going to unfold. He, of course, went as part of the MK party president, using the South African flag. From an international relations perspective, how that's going to go ahead and transpire, we wait to see. After the break, everyone saw what happened yesterday with regards to Nobuhle Nkabane being removed as the higher education minister. This is, of course, with regards to stories of her not going ahead and being transparent with regards to SETA appointments. She's now been replaced by Buti Manamela, who's going to take over that position. What next for a portfolio that has been not just highly contested, but highly controversial at the same time? I'm going to be speaking to the South African Union of Students first, and then after that, the South African Communist Party, who Manamela is a member of. Do stay tuned.